So let's kick off by taking a look at shape number 1 of the E natural minor scale. Now we're going to be basing this around shape number 1 of the E minor pentatonic scale. It's going to share the same position, it's going to share the same root notes, and also the shapes are quite similar. You can see how the two shapes fit on top of one another, which is really useful when it comes to improvising. As well as that, we can also visualize this shape as being based around an E minor chord shape as well as an E5 power chord shape. Let's take a look at the location of the root notes. We have a root note on the open 6th string, the 2nd fret of the 4th string, and the open top string. This is a 2-octave shape, so it is covering a large portion of the fretboard, and we are going to be playing across all 6 strings. Let's start off by taking a look at the shape itself. We are going to be working with a finger per fret technique, so you are going to have to use your little finger. Good training for your little finger. We're going to start off on the low E string, onto the A string, now onto the D string. This is where the open position shape needs a little bit of alteration. There's one note in particular that we would normally play on the G string, and you will play on the G string when we look at the movable variation of this, but quite often when you play scale shapes in the open position, open strings don't allow us to play certain notes in certain places, so the shape has to be altered. So you're going to be playing the open D to the 2nd fret, but we're going to be including the F sharp note in this position on the D string at the 4th fret. Normally we would play that note on the G string. It would be on the -1 G string. Obviously we can't play any lower than G, and we need an F sharp, so hence why we're having to play it there. So let's just look at those bottom 3 strings one more time. Working with a finger per fret, you are going to be using your little finger. If you can't get your little finger to work, it is okay to use your 1st and 3rd, but I'd really try to stick with the finger per fret. Onto the G string, onto the B, and then conclude on the top E. Now, when playing scales, it is possible to play notes that continue past the highest root note, or that continue lower than the lowest root note. Now, the lowest root note in this instance is the bottom E string, so we can't play any lower than that in this position. But on the top E string, we can continue the scale past the open top E. We can include the 2nd fret of the top E and the 3rd fret. So we have a complete area of the neck now covered. This is great. This means that you're not sort of tied to playing with 1 octave or 2 octaves and just with between root note to root note. It means that you can continue past and free up an entire area of the fretboard. So now I'm going to play through the shape for you with the click. I'm going to play from the lowest root note all the way up to the highest root note, and then continue past up to the highest note in that position. I will then descend and resolve to the lowest root note. Let's check it out. So it is possible to move this shape around the neck. Let's look at how we play this shape an octave higher and look at the more traditional fingering that you will use. When we move this shape an octave higher, basically any of the open strings that you have played will be replaced by notes played at the 12th fret. The 12th fret is where everything starts again. So you would play 12, 14, 15, 12, 14, 15, and then you will just play 12 and 14 on the D string, and then you will drop back a position and play that F sharp note on the G string, and then continue. So the shape is exactly the same, except that awkward stretch that you play on the D string. You can play it that way if you like, but the more recognized version is to be able to play that F sharp note on the G string. So you would have this shape. So why is this important? Well, straight away, we've introduced a new scale, we've introduced some new vocabulary, and we've looked at how we can move the scale shape around the neck. The natural minor is a great scale for you to add to your minor pentatonic. There's only a 2-note difference. And once you get used to the shape, if you practice a minor pentatonic from a chosen root note and then practice the natural minor from the same root note, you will be able to see that both scales share a very similar DNA. It's just the fact that the natural minor includes 2 extra notes. And those 2 extra notes are really powerful notes, especially when you're looking at the shape. It's a great way of, when you're playing a minor pentatonic, being able to fill in the gaps. In other words, those empty frets between the notes that we fret within the pentatonic scale, but actually knowing how those notes function and knowing the results that those new notes will give to the sound of the pentatonic scale. Okay, so now it's your turn to practice shape number 1 of the E natural minor scale.